Welcome everybody to is it a video? Is it a podcast? Is it
we don't know.
We don't know yet, no.
But it's gonna be good.
It's gonna be good, it's gonna be long, it's gonna be long. Yeah. We're here with Oliver. Oliver Lines. You were producer of the project we're gonna be talking about today.
Right, Scholar's Tale.
Scholar's Tale, that's what it's called. It was done like on a student
basis,
okay.
Created in 8 weeks, basically.
That's 8.
So 8 weeks development time, which is not much. Even though it's not a very long game, it's quite a short experience. But just to reach a certain level of polish, you really need to hang in there.
All right.
Right.
So yeah, we'll probably run a trailer now, right?
Let's roll it.
Do you feel stuck in a place all too dreary and familiar? Do you long to face the unpredictable? An ancient tome will guide you to a new world. A place of aboriginal beauty, mystery, and adventure. Experience marvelous levity by gliding with your own wings. Take in stunning sights and voyage beyond everything you know. What price would you pay to be part of this inimitable tale?
I think it's bloody impressive.
I think so too. I mean, I gotta think so, right? Usually, I think trailers that are done on, for student projects are, it's last evening before for Goldmaster, you just capture some in-game footage and put some audio on it, and that's it. We try to, do something a little bit more, well, like a real trailer. Mm-hmm. So we went back to the studio and recorded some audio. We had a script for it, but still, I mean, I think it was created in one night as well, because at the end of the project, it usually it's just a hot phase.
This is what everybody's talking about, the crunch experience, where you just basically put in work and work and work.
Well, it's real. I mean, to me, I don't think that if you really are passionate about a project, and if you really want to do something special, you're willing to put in the hours.
How does that relate to all the other stages of work? Is it like that every day, or is it just really like a short phase in the end of everything?
Well, for A Scholar's Tale, it was kind of a constant thing. At least we've put in a lot of work during weekends as well. But just really because the team was really dedicated. To me personally, I think it was a privilege to work with these people, because they are extremely skilled at what they do. They put in a lot of passion. And,
it shows, right?
And
they look,
I mean,
still,
it is a small game, but we really try to create a world that feels grounded, that has some background lore, where narration and certain locations kind of match. So the thing is, we have a great concept artist. Like, she's super fast and her stuff looks ridiculously good, and literally every corner of the canyon has been concepted in 2D first, which is, especially for a student project, not that usual, really taking that time, because she basically was just drawing all day long and putting out dozens, if not hundreds, of pieces.
No, right. You could basically take it from there and then still run with it.
Right.
Build another level based on what's there.
And also with that mission in mind, to still make it grounded and feel real. Like, for instance, in the canyon, all these villages are heavily inspired by Pueblo architecture, right? So, of course, you're building a fantasy world, and things don't need to be realistic all the time. I mean, you're low gravity platforming here, like you'd be, like you're in space, but still, in itself, the whole thing sort of must feel
it feels like
real.
It has its own kind of
right.
kind of rules.
It must follow its own set of laws and rules.
You had this amazing concept artist,
right?
Who we saw some concept art from. There was her. There was you. Obviously, that's not.
That's not enough. We were a total of 7, a core team of 7 people, right? And 3 external supporters. That included a writer for the dialogue, for the background lore, for all of that. Somebody that develops the world, and the speaker, of course. Somebody got to do the voice stuff, and we had a musician as well that also composed the music, took care of some of the sound effects, and also did some mixing for the voice stuff, because usually you don't get a good quality straight out of the recording.
Okay, how do you get hold of the external people? Because you don't run on a big budget, right?
No, we don't. Asking
or any budget.
No budget. No budget at all.
So do you go on the internet? Or is it people you know before?
You know somebody that knows somebody, and you just dig in and ask people, right? And so but I mean, half of the job is constantly getting to know new people, and at some point you just, for almost any occasion, know somebody that can help. And people are usually willing to help, right? They like doing that.
Okay. So you'd think, in order to be, to recruit for your project, you gotta hang around in your local scene a lot.
Yes.
Okay. So that was your intention from the beginning, to have like a big narrative over arc, or how was the original concept to that?
Well, the original concept featured some additional gameplay mechanics, but we never. We were pretty quick to drop these in favor of more and deeper narration, right?
What was the things that I missed? Was there another?
Oh
flight?
yeah.
Could I get a helicopter movement or?
No. There was, and basically it's just deactivated. It's even in the game. There was a teleport mechanic, so you could drop like a teleport ball and activate it with a button just to instantly be taken there, which would have been cool for certain types of puzzles. There still is a rope swing mechanic, sort of like, because we intended on doing a big forest level. That's the one that has been completely dropped, and you would do some rope swinging there. Which would have actually fit quite nicely with the platforming aspect, right? And all of these mechanics were not polished but functional, and I think there are even bits of code in the game left where it potentially would be possible.
So I could technically go there and find
probably
a loot box with rope swing.
Yeah, of course, if you pay 500 diamonds. When you start out, you have this great idea of what it should be like, and then at some point reality kicks in. Okay, and you realize you're not gonna.
How does that work? When is the time it's not going to work?
Well, the jury will tell you.
So there's a jury?
Yeah, there is a jury, which is basically, it is a student project, so we had to present the game or the different development stages at certain points in time to the jury, and they would tell you, this looks realistic, your scope, or it doesn't. Usually they're right.
You've bitten off more than you can chew, basically.
Right. Because initially, there's this one giant level, the canyon. The initial idea was that this was one of 3 levels of this size.
Okay. The team members, have you done all the same amount of project work before, prior to Scholar's Tale?
Yeah, most of them most of them, except for the game designer.
Okay, so you weren't completely wet behind the ears, and yet you overscoped by like 3 times.
Yes.
Okay, so that happens,
and it happens over and over again, and I think it happens in the industry all the time. You know.
Oh yeah, every indie developer you talk to is like, my next game is going to be in 3 months. Like,
big studios as well. I mean, you see these giant day one patches. You know, there are sometimes where the download size is bigger than the actual game or close to it.
You just gotta sit down and wait for like another day until everything is patched.
Overscoping is one of those things you just sometimes have to cut. And it can be painful, but you gotta be pragmatic there.
Yeah.
It meant going back to the studio, rewriting bits of the story so that it still sort of makes sense as a whole. You just gotta do that. That's part of the process, right?
Is everyone taking it like...
They did, which was great.
Or?
Which was great. That was really professional, actually. I mean, I've had other teams, and that was much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But
so people wouldn't accept that stuff is cut, or
they would accept it, but it would just take them longer to accept it. Okay. Right?
Your designer, who basically has to figure out at one point, okay, he's basically got to manage with what's left, what resources are left, and then make sense of it. That's his job at one point.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
And he had to do a lot of communication with the external writer, and I think the external writer, I mean, this guy really had to bleed. There were, I mean, many iterations of the story, and at some point it just wouldn't make sense anymore. We're like, all right, let's start from scratch with what we have.
Ooh.
I mean. These are the things that I think I, as a producer, could have done better as well. But it's sometimes hard to find out, you know, or to estimate how many things you can get done if you don't know the people that well, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can, you know, there are techniques for measuring the velocity, how fast can you produce certain assets, how long does it take to build, like, a huge house, how long does it take to build a level or whatever. You can measure these things, but you can always only measure based on experience.
Is there like a thing that you did in this project as a team manager, basically, that you would never do again, that you think, okay, that didn't go well?
Yeah, I think I should have been that overscope shouting bitch, you know. People, scope, cut it, you know. We were not gonna plan on 3 rows, we'll do 1, and then we know how long it takes, and then we can do another one.
Oh yeah.
And maybe even save some time, because you can reuse some assets or just retexture them. Like, you don't need to have a whole new set of rocks for a new level. You could do different textures and align them and place them differently, and nobody would notice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not just the overscoping; it's also figuring out to do what you can do, starting very little.
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically doing one thing first, and collecting or gathering that experience.
You yourself are a game producer, will be a game producer.
Game producer in the making.
A game producer in the making.
Yeah, work in progress. I did work as a freelance photographer for a long time.
Okay.
And at some point decided I want to change something. I want to have a new challenge. Still something that is a lot about visual things, but much more interactive. And in addition to that, I really had that urge to, you know, work with a team on a day-to-day basis, not just for some special shootings or projects, but on a day-to-day basis, bonding with people and really trying to achieve something with them. So I decided to do a game design course first, and afterwards do production. So, because at some point I really want to be self-employed again and found a company at some point. But I think one of the most important things is to understand how all these different elements come together. And a producer should know about that. What a producer also should know about is game design, because you do not want to be the guy that doesn't know what they're asking for. You should not just be a manager kind of guy. You should be somebody that has a certain feeling and also a solid foundation of knowledge of what the product is and what a game is.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of idealism in this industry, which I think is very unique.
There's a lot more bullshit in other industries that work like that. Run on enthusiasm mostly.
Right. And there's a ton of people that, you know, have been there before it was cool. And they kind of shaped that culture.
That cool stage, is it already here?
Yeah, I think so. Well, before, as I said, I worked as a photographer before, and for a long time that used to be a cool thing. And then everybody did it, and it wasn't cool. It's kind of like your grandma on Facebook. You know, that was the point. When it's over.
What, your grandma on Facebook was a professional photographer?
No. But that's just the point where it's.
Is she only your grandma on Facebook?
No, she's not.
She's your real life grandmother.
Well. Yeah. No.
We're friends on Facebook, but not in real life. We're grandparents on Facebook.
So many people want to do something, and quality suffers.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's the point I try to make. So in games you still have a lot of these people that are so dedicated, and they could do other things. I mean, if I look at our class or at other people at our school, I mean, you have people coming from all walks of life, right? From people that worked in the kitchen, or in movies, or in tourism, or in whatever. That just always had this passion for games, and at some point decided to just do it, no matter what. And that's cool. It makes for a good culture.
Do you think the availability of all of the technology now that the engines are available for free, the basic engines are available for free, you can... By the way, what engine did you build the Scholars?
We've built it in Unreal.
Was that like a choice based on the art you wanted to produce, or did your tech artist tell you to do it? Or?
I think Unreal works very well for certain types of games. First-person games are surely one of them, because it also has a history of FPS games.
Oh yeah.
So that usually works very well, but I wouldn't want to get into that sort of Unreal versus Unity or whatever battle. This is, to me, this is crap. It depends on the skill set of the team at the end of the day.
The students you're working with now, and everyone in the industry, or at least the indies that come out, do you still look left and right a lot with new or old engines that are outside of the either Unity or Unreal?
Well, not that much. I mean, you do have other big engines that are like Frostbite, for instance, but they're proprietary, right? Proprietary, so you don't get to use them unless you're, for instance, an EA studio or
you're selling out and working for them.
Right. You do, but you know.
Nah, it's cool.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. The thing that matters is what you build. But that's the same. I mean, I had these talks in photography. Which camera unit is it? Nikon? Is it Canon? Is it? You know, the good or the bad influence is usually behind the camera, not inside the camera. The problem sits right behind it if it's not good. And it's the same with games. What's much more important, I think, is that you're accustomed to your tools. You know your tools, you know, so that they don't get in the way when you're building your vision. Right. So that's an important thing. You should know your tools because it saves a lot of time.
Oh yeah. That's,
right. Sometimes moving to
aim into that. You've mentioned that a lot of the work that you've put in prior to actually putting hands-on work on it would already go into the concept of narration.
Right. There are some things in-game, of course, that are 2D art as well. There's a ton of decals like these cave paintings that you see.
Yeah.
I think in total are more than 60 different decals. I mean, you know, that sort of tells something about the people that lived in this world. I mean, you know, for instance, the canyon level, it's completely empty for story reasons, but we still wanted to tell something about that culture that lived there. You know, the girl that you play in this part of the story is a young tribal woman who comes home from a rite of passage and sees that all the people she knew are gone, the whole tribe is gone, and she just sees this giant massive structure, that temple that doesn't really fit there, and then she goes out to find out where did they all go, right? So these cave paintings and decals were one of the ways how we could tell something about the background or the different areas. Like, you know, you need to sort of cover all the different things that make a culture. So there's a village part with workshops where, you know, people build these gliders that you can also use in the game. There is, of course, industry, you know, with the clay pit, for instance.
At what point did you guys decide that there was going to be world building in there? And there's going to be actually...
That was early on,
somebody is going to be on your payroll who does world building, who writes back lore.
Right, that was, well, from the very beginning, actually. We did have some failures, especially, as I told before, with overscoping how many levels we want in there. We messed that up. But one thing that we really got right is that we were able to set our priorities straight from the beginning on. It was always about atmosphere, narration, building a interactive visual novel. Not about, I mean, I know that the jump mechanic, for instance, which is still on the gameplay side is an important part, but it could feel much better, of course, if we had that time. But you have to set, you know, like design is management of constraints, right? So you got to set your priorities there. You cannot do everything else. It's all going to feel mediocre.
You've diverted the energy.
Right. And there were several reasons for that. One of them was lack of time. Another one was if we were really going for that visual novel thing. One situation we really wanted to avoid is have people be stuck at some point in the game because of maybe lack of skill or understanding what they have to do. So because that kind of kills the flow experience of having that narrator constantly tell you a bit more about the world, and it would just lead to having you know, longer periods of time where you just have to try over and over and over again, and you'd be taken out of the experience. So we straightened that out and said we're going all in on narration. Right.
Okay, so you kind of kept the game invisible by avoiding any grind that you would have to do and retry.
Right.
That should not be,
because that sometimes causes problems.
So with your narrative, like being so kind of a focal point of what you do, like what did you wanna? Do you want to give it away? Do you want to talk about what the narration is about?
It's no secret. I mean, everybody should enjoy the game the way you know, they want to enjoy it. But one thing that we did care about is that topic of escapism, right? Of wanting to leave your life behind for a certain time and dive into another world. If you are a player that really wants to dive into a narrative focused game, you're sort of looking for that escape. And the scholar, as a person who has a very boring life, just, you know, he's bound by an ancient oath, has to stay in that library without any other person to talk to, and one day he stumbles upon this magic tome, you know, and the tome promises, you know, adventure and sort of a relief from his everyday life, right? And I think many people are looking for that same thing when playing a game. You know, you might have been doing your job and it might have been stressful, and then you come home and you just close the door and you dive into that experience. So we kind of wanted to build the Scholar as something where you could, as a person that you could identify with, so that players' motivation matches the Scholar's motivation, and you both kind of dive into that.
So what you discover is basically what the Scholar discovers, and at the same time you have the emotional experience with that. Sort of,
but because at the end of the day, well, once the game ends, you got to go back to your job, and it might still be.
Does the Scholar go back to the job, or?
Well, at least there is a parallel line there, because the Scholar. Well, we don't want to spoil the fun, but it does not turn out as intended for him, right? Because when trying to escape from life by, you know, just diving into a virtual world, you don't really do anything about your real life problems. And we think it is an interesting idea of using a game as a medium to deliver a message that is actually...
That's so
you should care about your real life,
like,
right?
outside of games, basically. Out perspective.
Yeah, but I mean, you if you want to tell a story, you gotta capture or grab people's attention where it is, right? So I don't think it might seem paradox, but it's actually not. It just makes plain sense.
Does it work with the things you've put in the game? As you mentioned, like, a lot of work went into the world building and storytelling, and so that everything is in place at the right place. Like, how do you have a map for that? Where should the clues be hidden? What should they tell us? And what should be definitely left a mystery? How did you approach that?
Well, I think one thing that is unique to games is that you have to, as a developer, you have to accept that you don't have complete control over what the player sees and over what they will not see. And that is a challenge, because it should still be comprehensible. But it's also a big chance, because you can build in stuff that some players won't see. But for those that explore, it's very rewarding to see that. Oh my God, I've just found there's that one scene in the village in the canyon where just a house there, empty, and you'd be like, well, yeah, it's just another house. I can go in there and maybe he tells me something about it. The narrator tells me something about it or not. But it turns out that this is the house where the girl that you play lived in, and you see some personal objects lying there, and that is cool, because you can stumble upon this, but you don't have to. So that is something unique to games that you can do there, right? Because you can, in movies, you only have, you know, the official movie, and you might have a director's cut and some deleted scenes.
Yeah. And you can't go back usually. Right,
but that is usually bonus content. And in a game, you could have a player see everything, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So the challenge is just to give them enough information so that they understand. But the big chance is that you can, you know, put in stuff that is just bonus. That's just additional content. Like, as I said, looking at these cave paintings in the game, they tell a lot of things about the culture. Like, you could see how people lived and what their lives were about, even though you don't meet any of them, right?
Yeah. So you're not really targeting like the speedrunners.
You could speedrun the game, of course. You could do that, but
yeah, I sort of shot my own foot with that remark, because where do you go from there?
Well, we might add a time tracker.
You can speed run a walking simulator
and a leaderboard. Yeah, well.
Yeah, I'm actually the one who finished.
Speed running simulator.
Yeah. I get. I'm the fastest one to finish Firewatch ever.
without ever talking to Delilah, right?
Yeah, what else?
It's just the noises.
What a positively stupid console. You know what? I like the game, but I think it was
Henry,
too fast.
are you? Shut up! I'm running.
I'm running. I don't have time. I can't catch my breath. Were all the people that you were working with, were they on board initially, or did you pitch it to them?
No, that was actually a funny thing.
Was it your original idea?
No. Initially, I wanted to pitch a much different game, quite another thing. It was only me and the game designer. We were looking for a team for the upcoming semester, and that would have been a very retro arcade sort of thing. And maybe like 2 minutes before my pitch time was, I heard that, I saw the pitch of this other team, and I was like, I want to do this, dude. You're coming with me, because they were like, we still need a producer, we still need a game designer. I was like, it's a match, let's do it.
All right.
So that was instinct at that point, right? It was just, this sounds right, let's do it.
So you got on board.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, when you would have to assemble a team of people, of the same people, what would you be looking for in them? I mean, you couldn't know before that they would deliver on everything that that you needed, right?
I mean, I've had enough time to watch their former projects. I've seen what they can do. To me, you can never really know whether it just works out, but more especially I think on a social level. I mean, if you have a team that has already worked together, you kind of know about these people. You know how to talk to them. Some people you need to be a bit more careful if you're criticizing and stuff. So I mean, the biggest thing is empathy there, right? Being able to create an atmosphere where people can focus on their work. I mean, I've seen people, lose so much time and mess up their games just because they were fighting all the time. So I think having a team that fits, having harmony in your team is much more important than just plain skill.
Yeah. Because
all that skill, you can have 7 top players, but if all of them are egos,
all of them type A and
right, it's not gonna work, right? So,
from you think that a team that is forming that kind of game would have to be a different kind of mindset, different kind of people than people who would say a mechanic-driven game would come from.
Yeah,
would they be a different bunch?
Yeah. Well, it depends. You do have some people, I think, especially if they're very unexperienced, that have their very rigid views about, I want to do this kind of game and only this kind of game. Okay. And at some point, it's the same with designers. They're kind of like, I want to build this type of mechanic or whatever. But I think the best of their class are those that love the process of designing.
Making things.
Right, making things.
Things.
Right. That's the really big point, And if you really love to do that, it can be anything. They just love the process of discovering, of testing, of finding out what's fun, what's not.
Mm-hmm. Because you put it out there now, and you hand it over to the players at one point. Then, of course, they're gonna write you a review, and maybe they.
If you're lucky.
That's the question, right? Are you always lucky to get... Because sometimes you get reviews from people who just figured out this wasn't the right game, and they give you like a thumbs down for that.
Fair enough.
Fair enough?
Fair enough, of course.
How many people reviewed the game after it came out?
I haven't had the time to see all the video reviews. I've read some of the comments, but of course there were a lot more downloads. You don't usually know how many. We don't track, right? We don't track how far people played it, and we didn't have time to use or to build in things like achievements, which are usually a good indicator. On you can see it with some big games that if there is an achievement for the ending of the game, and you can see how many players have gotten that achievement, so that sort of tells you or gives you a clue about how many people really played through the whole game. So, and you oftentimes see that they haven't even gotten the experience, the achievement for finishing the tutorial in some games, right? But still, to us, it was all about just putting it out, sharing it. Because what should you do? You have a finished game that you did as a student project. Why not put it out there? Because you still get additional feedback and you can learn from that, right? Which is more insight than just getting the review from the jury, for instance, that evaluates.
Oh, your teachers.
Teachers and industry veterans as well. I mean, we had a jury that was about 9 people from different companies, including like the likes of Ubisoft and others, which was very insightful. We had some members of the jury were more from a traditional and also German development background. You had these more international jury members, and the interesting thing is that the more international or jury members, they actually enjoyed it a lot more.
I'm gonna have to add that the school is in Berlin, Germany.
Right. So they knew a lot more about, for instance, the development that happened or the changes that happened with the whole wave of indie games that came out. Whereas the more traditional, old school developers were like, that's kind of weird, there's not enough gameplay in there. Which is a fair thing, if that's what you're looking for, I agree.
Yeah, you're looking
but
at the wrong
you should
place
not
there.
compare this game to a skill-based game. That's not what the game tries to be.
Yeah, there's no Monster Hunter.
No, it's no Monster Hunter.
No. That was my concern.
I'd love to see that person that does Monster Hunter in 8 weeks. That will be.
So you put it out on where did you put out the finished game, the finished product?
It's on itch.io.
It's on itch.
Right.
What would be your guess? Where would you fall in terms of player base? How many people would be out there saying, "I like that. If I found it, if I were exposed to it, I'm gonna purchase it at whatever."
That's a difficult estimate. I mean, you usually could look at numbers from similar games, but you'd also have to consider how your marketing budget is, or if there's none, like in our case, how much time do you have to build up a community? Because it's a grind, right? Just releasing a post every now and then is not enough, because it just flies by with all of that content on people's Facebook, Instagram feed. You need to be quite tenacious there, right? And just sometimes tell the same thing over and over and over again, so just that enough people actually see it.
I talked to a guy who talks to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Recently, I did that. So there is me, that guy, and all the people he talked to. That's where the wisdom came from. So it's a bit of a roundabout way to start a story. But what happened was I had a communication with him about community management. And what he said to me was what that guy allegedly told him. And that was community management can no longer be on the sideline of things. It would be basically, they were sitting with the game designers right now. Yeah. Because that's what you have to do. How does it apply at where you work?
I think it does apply, and I think still a lot of companies, even outside of the games industry, should take it much more seriously, because, I mean, we are almost overwhelmed with companies trying to get our attention. So it's an attention-driven business. All business is attention-driven nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And you see a lot of these things like classic advertisement not working anymore. If somebody's still watching TV and you have the ad break I mean, what do you do in an app break?
A word from our sponsor.
You do this. You do this, right?
Yeah.
So that's where your attention is. And we have a whole generation now of people that they don't really like it anymore if there is a company that wants to sell you something in your face, you know, really cool, let's buy this. It doesn't really work for, especially like the millennial generation, it doesn't really work anymore. So the thing is, or the ideal way of doing it is, especially in games, is building your community before your game is released. So if with more than 400 games released on the App Store, like on one single day sometimes, right? You have a very short period where you're even on the most recent list. So if people don't know about you on release day, you're dead on arrival. So you need to build a community, and you need to do it in a way that matches people's taste nowadays. And social is very big there, and I think a lot of companies are still missing out on that.
Is gaming doing it slightly or greatly better than everyone else?
I think they're doing it better than some of the old big companies in other industries, right? Because it's still a much younger industry. There's and in addition, I mean, you know, they know a thing or two about tech.
Yeah,
so that's
and
not
also the audience is also there, right? They go to places where you can communicate, where you can community.
Right, and it's not that new for them because many studios know that having important Twitch streamers play your game, for instance, can make a lot of a difference on how the game performs on the market. So.
It's something you talked earlier about, is that you're going to do this with your team with your next project, right? It's something you'll be looking into.
Yeah. Even though it's still, you know, just a student project, we made that early decision that we want to release it, and we want to do it for free. I did release a former student project for a price of like $5 on Steam, and it performed much worse. It was not a bad game. I mean, it had a lot of content.
We've established that it doesn't do shit
if
it's a good game or not.
It didn't work. So we said we're going to go for a different platform, and we're going to do it for free. And we're going to include some goodies like a soundtrack and that sort of stuff, and see what happens. And so far, just, you know, at least a few hundred people have downloaded it. Some people made video reviews of it and sent them to us, and we got into a conversation. You know, have some people get to know us, and many of them were asking, you know, will you do another one? And for many reasons, not just that one, we did decide to do another one, which we're just starting out with. And this time we're planning on, you know, doing like a intense 4-week development phase and putting out an early access after that, so they can influence the development process and really develop it together with us.
All right.
It might not be many people in the beginning, but still, I mean.
We'll be sure to add a link in the description somewhere. So
let's hope
it's gonna be down there.
It's gonna right. You need to be humble.
Yeah.
On some occasions, you shouldn't. You know, I've heard people talking. Oh, yeah, but we only have 10 dedicated players at the moment, but they're giving us a lot of feedback and stuff. But we are only interested in the next 100. Right? But I don't think you're worth your 100 followers if you don't value your first 10 dedicated fans, right?
Oh, yeah. Who are these other 90 peoples that make everyone else just, you know, sort of
Right, but
vanish?
I don't think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
That doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't sound like it should work.
I mean, as a game, you're not just competing with other games.
Oh, yeah.
You're competing with movies, with going to a club. You're competing with so many things, with streaming, you know, Netflix or whatever. I mean, where people spend a lot of time.
The other day I saw someone read a book, actually. That's
some still do.
That's out there, yeah.
Crazy. Must be a hipster.
Crazy stuff going on there. Well, you're gonna be using the same team, right? You're gonna be.
We are, yeah, right.
The same bunch of people.
Right. The thing is, during development, you know, and it's always if you do an more artsy or more narrative-focused game, you will have these. I'd not call them haters, but these people are constantly shouting, yeah, but you're just building a walking simulator. And then, well, they might be right. And I don't see the problem with that, but we still want to show them. So the next game is going to be a lot more gameplay focused, actually. We still have that liberty.
Yeah,
and we're going to make use of it.
I don't think you necessarily have to stick to your genre. If your community will... take a second look, then...
And it's not completely binary, right? You don't just... I would say, I don't like games at all, or it must be a narrative game. You can have... you can enjoy different types of games. I mean, I do play some way more hardcore games than that as well, but that was something I was really interested in doing.
Yeah, and I also think that you can't expect your audience to just like one thing. For one, like most games, like the most people who own a lot of games are just, that's a very small group, I think. So the very hard games and the walking simulators, it's all the same people, I think. It's all the indie fans, right? It's all the people who own 100 games on Steam or wherever they are. What's going to be the next thing? Once you leave school, when will you be finished?
This year, actually. September. Before I'm going to found a company, I still... what should I say? I'm completely aware that I still need to learn more, because I'm very interested in the AA space. I think that's really nice, because there is still there's a high production level compared to some more indie games.
Yeah.
But there is still some liberty with mechanics and innovation there. But that also means being able to scale a company to, a size where you're actually able to sustain that and actually build such a game. And that's not a 7-dev team.
It's not.
Right? It's not. You need to be able to do that.
So
I'd rather work at some company and learn how it's done.
Yeah.
And then we'll see. And then we'll sit back down again on this table and have a chat about it, right?
All right. Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool.
Thank you for now. This is it's been amazing.
It's been a joy.
And well, like you said, we'll speak again once you roll that out, and we'll keep an eye on the new project, and we'll add all the info on when the early access is going to come out.
Right.
And everyone should check out The Scholar's Tale.
Sure, you should.
And your future work. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. This was the Snobfox Developer Talk for now, and we'll see and hear you again next time. Next time we'll have something stitched together. Say bye, Ollie. Bye.
Why should I say bye? I won't leave.
Yeah, I think we're drinking beer now. I think there's one left.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think this should be paused. I think I've just updated my MySpace
well.
I think I just added your grandmother on MySpace.
Yeah, that's really cool. Just leave her there.